Which of the two is the specter? From the table, I observe the act. I don't know their language, nor the severity of silence shared between bird and cat. Far away, the river hums a song that fades by the second, and I collapse with blindfolded eyes, trying to cling to some absurd, dissonant notes. They knock me down, and I fear the premonitions that cats hide. If she does not decipher the sign, she may be dragged, just like me, to the place where everything is dismembered and slowly surrender to oblivion. Thank you.
Alejandra, ¿encontraste?
Claro, aquí está. Gracias, Mauricio. Gracias, Laura. Espectro, porque la vida es breve y tú también estás sedienta. Adrienne Rich. Para Coan. Por las tardes, un fantasma, la silueta de un pájaro pequeño, inmóvil, visita a la gata. Tras la ventana, el arcano señala con su pico un signo que ella deberá descifrar. Ambos se comunican a través de una cortina que respira con dificultad, sin saber confundida cuál de los dos es el espectro. Desde la mesa observo el acto, desconozco su lenguaje, la severidad compartida del silencio entre ave y gata. Lejos, el río tararea una canción más borrosa cada vez y me desplomo con ojos vendados. Trato de aferrarme a unas notas absurdas, disonantes. Me derriban. Temo a los presentimientos que los gatos guardan. Si ella no descifra el signo, quizás...
She froze. So I'll finish reading. Si ella no descifra el signo, quizás sea arrastrada como yo hacia donde todo es desmembrado y entregado sin prisa al olvido. Thank you. You guys.
Our next contributor will be Pet Bang Cow and CJ Anderson Wu.
柯老师，请念你的诗。
DJ, do you hear us?
Yeah, I try to communicate with my author. I wonder he hears it. 柯老师，请念你的诗。你要把你的麦克风打开。Yeah.
我直接念台语哈。好的。
对。
张图，我听见一曲风，伊就要死的节奏，伫你心房门口张图，远去的事物开始着切起来，提炼古杯假音，笑想杨花，冰封迟春。小长的喙皮，结冰的眉心，你拄出乌目睭，互淡蓝光收束。好，切中，咱毋袂长度，我已经过了幻想的阶段。你的声带悠然，微微啊滴。我望着一粒不黄的珠江内，有生形的悲伤，轻轻拍卡。
Hesitation for a 40-year-old single woman. I hear a song of longing for spring in the reason of Debussy hesitating at the door of your heart chambers. Curled up verses start to leap, extracting high decibel bass, dreaming of melting. The eyes locked spring, burning cheeks, frozen brows, your newly embarked black pupils, bound by a faint blue light, lowering your head, measuring the distance between intimacy and isolation. I have passed the stage of fantasies. Your graceful vocal cords slightly tremble. I touch an overly ripened womb with forming sadness inside, gently kicking. Thank you.
And for our next contributor, we have Nahri Ahmed.
Yes. Give me a second. My piece is called Gecko. It's a one-sentence story, and it's about 1.5 pages. So, Gecko. On this munificent moment, when my son was also born, the very same day that I was born, at a different time, in a different year, where coincidences such as no matter how rare occur, except that unaware of this occasion when mother and son celebrate the birthdays together on the same day, which may seem a little odd growing up as my son is unable to elevate his feelings. Instead, he is embarrassed, acutely conscious that he must share his birthday with his elderly mother, to whom...
Student. Krista.
Sorry?
Published.
To whom he owes much, still ashamed of celebrating his birthday together with me, though noted that nothing we can do to change this fact, which is stranger than fiction, as the cliche goes, but true. But this fact of our birthday is not a cliche by any long shot, as his friends tease him unnecessarily of something beyond us, that on this premise, my son promises to have nothing to do with celebrations anymore. Trust me, even if I want, we don't really get to make the rules. When such rules are imposed upon us from above, like coincidences, like so many other rules, which we cannot either make or break. Such is the day when my beautiful boy is born, and such is the day when my mother's beautiful girl is born. But as it turns out, we continue to live our lives regardless of these highs and lows. How true is it that in the oneness of being mother and son further binds us both through the same birthdays, only to be separated in death, perhaps? Not even that, not even death can separate us, as the days of the birth can never be separated, to be ever remindful of mother in sickness or in health, year in and year out. That mother and son have the same birthday, but hopefully not the same fate as residents of a struggle street where I'm born, on a torn blanket and a hole in the roof over me, where rainwater drips even to this day. But I change, that life is settling in with a good man, and then changes everything except the birthdays, which isn't a stigma on its own, but such as things hold unfathomable powers. So our mental health destroys lives like birds, which are small and insignificant, but together they fly to a significant harm with fatal consequences, bring down airplanes with a single big hit, or even house a gecko, for that matter, brings significant damage to electric wires as they hide unseen, eating away wires, and such without compunction to anyone's knowledge, the same way such as incidents house pests perpetuate, who are never house guests, obviously, but they remain in the house seemingly hidden and uninvited, causing unseen trouble, Like our birthdays, a significant occasion makes insignificant because of some nuisance value. The harm it can cause in somebody's life holds such vital powers which are not within our control, as our ties to birthdays may seem like a small event, perhaps, like some inconspicuous tiny gecko or insignificant flock of birds causing massive harms. Such unwarranted guests, namely fate and time, who house themselves in our lives. We cannot get rid of them, who in many subtle ways tell us that they are our guests, diligently chewing us away bit by bit until sunrise and sundown. They chew us a bit more. Thank you.
Gerardo Cárdenas.
Hi, everybody. All right, so let me read from the Spanish original. Nieve. Nieve. Nunca está realmente ahí. Es un suspiro extinto, una transición al silencio. La nieve devora el tiempo, traza nuevas venas en la piel, muere como los sueños entre el espacio imposible de los párpados. Nieve en Houston. Tormenta se fue en California. Un monarca enloquecido, una corte de idiotas. El mundo parece desgajarse, la nieve cae con la indiferencia de la eternidad, con la dulzura de la muerte. La nieve recrea el silencio por solo un instante. Por un segundo solo es ella, su cántico helado, su reposo. Al día siguiente que el mundo estalle, también nevará para que vuelva el silencio. Thank you.
Contributor Carla Carrillo.
I had seen her. Carla Carrillo, are you there?
Yes,
Great.
I'm here. Hello, I just wasn't sure you said my name, but I'm going to be reading The Art That Cries. It's a short fiction story. Okay. The oil painting of a garden called El Jardín de Eva stares back at Maite, whose brown eyes could have pierced a hole through it. As labeled under the painting, the artist, Gabriel Barrientos, was a childhood friend Maite loved growing up. As children who once played in his grandmother's garden, they now lived isolated from each other. Times they spent in the garden, times when Gabriel would find a daisy and rest its stem on Maite's ear, the times when Maite would push him around his grandmother's bushes, made them forget about their young troubles. One of the many troubles they both had to face was the reminder that Gabriel did not live with his grandmother, and the endless drive back home eventually accompanied him. Every August, he'd leave Maite alone. Maite remembers why it was a privilege to see the painting in a bright white room showcasing his art. It was not because it was painted by her beloved companion, but because while the departing visitors at the art exhibit whispered their admiration for the vibrant colors of the oil painting, she could smell the daisies from it. She could remember their white petals falling past her cheek and the aroma of the fresh flowers dancing around her nose. It's as if the garden had emerged in this lonely exhibition. She wonders why there are no other spectators in the room. She turns over her shoulder to see another painting done by Gabriel. Or is it a mirror? She couldn't see herself in it due to its opaque finish, but she saw her silhouette mimicking her movements. She walks towards the art piece, passing through the studio light rays that illuminate the white room. As she got close enough, her complete figure, the silhouette of her dress shirt and pants, short hair, and slim arms and ankles, reached the top and bottom of the frame. She notices no change. She always remembered Gabriel to have unusual ideas. Whenever he, as a child, had asked if she saw the reflection from the raindrop resting on one of the bushes, she would lie and say yes. He never stopped talking about the reflection from the raindrops each time it rained, and she wanted to please him as well as make him shut up. He always had an eye for detail, an eye that gazed upon intricate themes she was never able to notice. She traces her fingers on the edges of the art frame, looking for a way to illuminate or reveal the piece. She can't believe that the piece was simply meant to be gray. As she steps toward the side of the piece, she notices a green glowing light reflecting from it. She returns her gaze to El Jardín de Eva, illuminating with much brighter colors than before. Rays of chartreuse grow larger as she approaches the painting once again. Maite takes a closer look at the painting and finally notices what she hadn't figured out before. The vibrant colors weren't enough for the painting to shine brightly. It was the raindrops in the painting made of glittered epoxy. The clear finish, accompanied by the glitter, made the rain on the glossy painting shimmer. She then notices one raindrop shining brighter on the white petal of daisy. Oddly, the painting of the daisy starts wilting out of the canvas. Right as it succumbs to gravity, Maite holds the small flower. With devoted care, as she remains starstruck by the cleverly shimmering raindrops, she places the flower above her ear. After she turned back around, she was startled by her sudden reflection in the mirror across the room. Her appearance strikingly beautiful, with her now visible pink pants and white dress shirt, her short wavy hair, round glasses, and her plum high heels. It reveals itself in a way she had never seen in all her years of living. Roaring applause shakes the mirror and startles her. Maite hesitates a moment before approaching the mirror. Her reflection dissipates to an image of an audience clapping for her. In awe, she then hears a familiar voice. "I want to thank the curators and the staff of the museum for making this happen," said the mature voice. "Ever since I was a young boy, painter had always been someone I wanted to be. Colors and shine always attracted me in a way that only one person was able to understand. That is why I have before you a piece I call Maite, who I'd like to call my first love." Whips of air from the clapping tremble the mirror again as Maite avoids shedding any tears. Maite was a young girl who I spent every summer with until the age of 16 when I moved from Virginia to California. Maite was a friend, an artist, a noble daughter, and sometimes a girl who loved to argue. Maite always wanted to be a lawyer while growing up. She was inspired by her mother's story of immigrating to the States and wanted to help her follow her dreams. She instead studied psychology in college, as far as I knew. A moment of silence fills the room, and the head of Gabriel Barrientos finally appears in the mirror. She steps back from the mirror, startled by his eyes piercing through her with no reaction. She sees his eye twitching and hands shaking, a common motion he does when he's nervous. Gabriel sniffles and continues. "Her untimely death was something I never thought I'd have to prepare for. I've dealt with many losses in my life. Family members with whom I've cut ties, the apartment I've had after moving out, many paintings by muggers who don't appreciate art. But this one, Maite, was a different pain I felt. I hadn't seen her since my move, and I never once told her that I loved her, that I admired her resilience to make things happen, that I would do anything to see her." As soon as she hears this, Maite drops to her knees and wallows in regret. She thinks she also should have told him she loved him and would be home with him soon, wherever that was. She also hears sniffles from some spectators from the other side of the mirror. Meanwhile, Gabriel continues. "Because I wasn't sure how she would look like, I decided to take an educated guess. I painted her to have the most professional outfit I can imagine. I also painted her to look like I last remembered her, with short hair and round glasses that complemented the wonderful sepia skin she had. And lastly, I painted her in the light. When you walked in here, ladies and gentlemen, you only saw gray. I like to imagine an alternate world where she was able to see my paintings, and if she was there to see this one, this painting would glow like she did. She had always been my light in a world full of darkness." As Maite sobs on the white floor, the applause returns, later softening, and the frame eventually stops trembling. She smiles through her tears and looks straight into Gabriel's eyes. He looks at her back and unknowingly says his last goodbye. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. And for our next contributor, we have Claudia Chappelle.
Sorry. Hello, can y'all hear me? Okay. This is titled Broken Seams. I hate throwing away old clothes, older damage. If they're good enough, I'll donate or try to sell them if that can be managed, or I'll keep them boxed on the closet floor. Their potential is so clear that I say, I'll learn to make them useful again, with the earnest intention that one day my visions will make it out of my brain. Yet there they lay folded in a box, their utility neutralized abruptly, now frozen in time like a broken clock, potential gone instantaneously, sadly because of something unforeseen, like the untimely rip of a big scene. Thank you.
For our next contributor, we have Seth Cornell.
I don't know if Seth is here. Seth, are you here? I think not.
Then we can go with our next contributor, Laura Eppinger.
Hi, thanks everyone. It's really special to be here. Congrats to everyone. I want to thank the editors too. It was really great to work with Abraham. I really wrote this piece 6 weeks postpartum, my first child, and I felt like I was getting part of my brain back. Now I'm joining you from bed. My kid turns 4 months tomorrow, and I'm having some medical issues. So being here is really special for me and reminding me that I can do this. I've been taking a break from writing, so it goes, but this is called Milk Madness. With you, I go into labor under the dark sky of a new moon. Now I can track your age in weeks by the lunar cycle. We bring you home, our newborn with the perfect O-shaped mouth, which latched so readily to me the first time that our nurse did a double take. It's not normally this easy, she wanted me to know. Every room in this house is set up to welcome you, including the spider plants that peek out from every corner, soaking up the sun and ever reaching out for more. They are all offshoots of the original, owned by your great-great-grandmother. We were gifted one thumb-sized seedling during the month we bought our house, and it has gone wild these past 5 years. It had babies, who then had babies, which continued to make tight buds and white flowers and more mini, spindly greens, each of them greedy for more space and more life. In your first week here, you grew a pound when the goal was only 1 ounce per day. We supplement the food I make with formula when I simply can't keep up with your needs. Feeding you is ecstasy against my skin, make no mistake, but my arms never stop shaking from holding you in place. You're still hungry, even after a full hour, lips pursed and gulping. But this is no problem. We love to nourish you, and we know fed is best. You are 2 weeks old, and a pearly moon glistens through the window. By now, that thing the disapproving internet chorus warned us about has come to pass. Too used to the bottle, you lose patience with the breast. Forget how to attach, so I pump and pump my own cream and fats. Lots of men online want me to know that I am selfish for all of this, but they don't see your full dumpling cheeks and delicious, chubby tummy. You grow faster than my spider babies, and that is saying something. But really, it's the nursing dreams that had to stop. Rising for the middle of the night feed, I swore every time that you were deep in bed with me, lost within the sheets. You are, of course, swaddled on your back in the bassinet beside me. We follow doctor's orders. More than once, I was convinced I'd been nursing twins. I screamed, cried at these visions of phantom babies sunk beneath me. When I stopped putting you against my chest, the waking nightmares ceased as well. Something about that connection drove me wild when unconscious, and maybe in waking too. You've been home 6 weeks, and a chalky full moon sits above us, illuminating the February snow. When your pink circle mouth isn't sipping, it coos. I sing what you sing back to you. Whoa, hello. Oh, oh, oh. Our feeding routine works well enough, but I cannot pump in the same room as you. No matter how sated you are, No matter how unresponsive in deep sleep, when the machine whirs, you will moan and stir. You can smell it in the air, my milk, and it drives you wild. I call it milk madness and must always siphon off a few doors down. I'm sure the anonymous comments section horde could list all the ways I am doing this wrong, but sustenance seeps out of me, under the sun and then the stars, the sun again. Sometimes it leaks through my shirt and onto my knees, especially when you cry, but also as you sleep. I put down my phone and stretch your legs. One kick and then another. I reach up and out with your arms, sprawling like spider vines sent by our ancestors to show us how to spread and thrive. Sure, it makes us lunatics by definition, but I teach you how to howl our never sated hunger at the moon. Thank you.
And for our next contributor, we have Kathy Farfan.
Tahni Farfan, I think she's not here. I think she's not here.
Then we'll move on to Mark Hoden.
Hi there. My poem is entitled Cosmology, and I wrote it in light of the recent developments with the planet Pluto, and then I brought it down to Earth. Cosmology. Some things actually can be easily explained. She wanted to be the sun, and for a while I could be Mercury. But over time, I became Pluto, and then one day, without notice, I was relegated to non-planetary status. Thank you.
Thank you. And for our next contributor, can I have Christina Odlin?
She's not here.
Moving on, our next contributor is Krista Lopez.
Everyone. So I wrote this creative nonfiction as one of my first essays here at UHD. The topic was to write an essay about a memory. And while everyone else wrote really, really nice reflective essays about really nice memories they had growing up, I decided to dig a little deeper and do something a little bit darker. So here it goes. This one is called Anywhere But Here. I hardly ever get to go anywhere on the weekends. If I do, it's to my Aunt Norma's house or church. My body was filled with excitement, thousands of crawling ants inside my skin, making me anxious to be out of the house. The bus ride to the UIL competition was the longest ride I'd ever experienced. My elementary school classmates were eager to be able to go on an outing that didn't require their parents or their money. I stare intently at the back of David's head. I have known David since our start in elementary school. We have been in the same class since pre-K, and this year was no different. We both continued to glance out of the window, watching as the scenery changed. Chain link fences became wood, brown, dried grass became green and manicured. To nearby people, we probably looked creepy. Dozens of eyes peering from the windows of the yellow bus. Windows opened all the way. We stared in amazement at what a life without lack looked like. As the bus rumbled on, David and I hurriedly went over our notes. We had done music memory for the past 3 years. Although this was only an elementary UIL competition, the competition was going to be ruthless. As we entered the building, my eyes immediately fixated on the floor. The shine was incomparable, waxed to perfection, for feet to be dragged over it. My classmates brought in grass and mud from their shoes. I shuddered in disgust. This school was too clean for us. Our teacher, Miss Dan, ushered us into rows of lunch tables situated by the windows. As we sat down, I looked over the list of music that would be on the selection played by the judges. Truthfully, a lot of the music sounded similar. It was like the composers of the century teamed up together and decided to plagiarize each other's work. Miss Stanton could tell by my disgruntled face that I needed some extra guidance. She hobbled over her huge thighs, brushing the backs of other students as she tried unsuccessfully to glide down the aisle to me. The other kids snickered as she walked by. Without even hesitating, she continued. Her breathing was heavy. Her chest rose furiously as she attempted to utter a word. She gave up, instead began to fan herself with a makeshift fan made of folded up papers. Okay, dear, she finally mustered. I can see that you are second guessing yourself. Don't stress too much about this. This is your third year in this competition, and I believe that you will do just as wonderfully as you did last year. And with that quick affirmation, she hobbled off. Our team is called into a classroom. I followed the wax tile down the hall, counting the squares on the floor. I chose my seat in the front closest to the judges. I sigh, taking a deep breath in and out. I've got this. I attempt to shake off my unexplained jitters that have somehow entered my body. The judge proceeds to read from his manuscript a long list of procedures and rules. I stare out of the window. The sun is beaming in the sky. Dark clouds are floating from one side to the other. I'm brought back to reality by the judges stating, and now we will begin music memory. A woman's voice from the black boom box announces sweetly that this composition would be number one. The competition proceeded. The time that had dragged on the bus ride seemed to fly by in this classroom. Selection after selection played on. I imagine this is what happens in a club, the DJ playing song after song to mindless dancers. Suddenly, a chime woke me from this daze, and the judge smiled, rising from his seat at the front of the room. Great job, guys. This is the end of the competition. Your teacher should be very proud of all of you. We will have your scores within a few minutes. I sighed in relief. We were ushered out of the room single file and back to our original places in the cafeteria. Others from our room had already gathered there waiting for other teams from our school to finish. Miss Stanton was beaming with pride, her forehead filled with perspiration. It seemed that not long after sitting back down, our judge came back beaming from ear to ear. His comb over pasted to his forehead, the little hair he was managing to save, screaming for help. Miss Stanton, I would like to inform you that your students have taken first, second, and third place in the music memory competition. My heart swelled with pride, tears filled my eyes, yet anticipation of what I had earned kept me plastered to the bench. The bus ride back was filled with laughter, joyful celebration, and the sounds of clinking metals against skin. I peered over the seats to see our school come into full view. I scanned the parking lot for my grandma's car. My eyes continuously hovered over each car, hoping that somehow hers would appear. Nothing. I exited the bus worried that somehow my freedom on this Saturday had managed to slip my grandma's mind. As I was mid-thought, my aunt appeared before me. Her signature short bob swayed in the wind, her son Aaron in tow behind her. Krista Marie, I'm taking you home. Something wasn't right. Her voice sounded somber, her eyes vacant. She was so good at masking her emotions. I nodded and followed close behind. So did you win? My little cousin asked. I got second place, I huffed. Suddenly the thought of my prize seemed meaningless to the ominous signs that pointed in the direction of bad news. The dark clouds had somehow followed us back to our side of town. My aunt stared at the floor of her car. We rode in silence. I wish I was anywhere but here. We arrived at my grandma's house. The sight of her cobalt blue car calmed the millions of ants that continued to crawl inside my skin. Hey, is my mom here? I asked. My aunt got out of the car and continued to stare down. We entered my grandma's house. The bar door bumped my back as I attempted to slip inside after my aunt, who seemed to have been moving at double her usual speed. My grandma was sitting in her usual spot at the kitchen table, staring out of the window. She seemed smaller, fragile almost. Her face looked flushed. My stomach turned. Grandma, where's my mom? Her mouth turned upward like she tasted something bitter and cleared her throat. Sit down. I knew that her being with that viejo was going to end badly. That was her name for him. She never addressed by him by his name. She rose from her seat. Her frame only reached 5 feet on a good day, but she was full of strength and wit. She had been a migrant worker in her younger days, her frame strong from the endless days of laboring in the fields, picking fruits and vegetables. Her eyes were a cloudy blue. They seemed to peer inside of me, murking my thoughts. Your mother did something so stupid, very stupid. She didn't care about you or anyone else. My eyes widened. Well, what did she do? Where is she? My grandma grimaced again. Luis, she screamed. I could hear my grandpa's footsteps drawing nearer. He entered the kitchen standing behind my aunt, who I forgot was still even in the room. Luis, I can't tell her. She is only a child. My grandpa thought on this for a moment, looked at the floor and shook his head. My grandma bit her lip and shook her head. Her gold earrings shook violently with her face. Your mother tried to kill herself. I stared at the floor. Something must be very interesting about it for everyone to stare. The linoleum a hunter green color, the edges peeled upwards ever so gently, exposing the brown wood boards that covered the floor of the kitchen. She isn't dead, my grandma interjected, breaking me from my trance. They took her. Took her where? I asked weakly. To a hospital in Houston, and we are going tomorrow. The rest of the evening and the night was a blur. My grandma and grandpa did not attempt to make small talk. They whispered in the other room to each other. My grandma asked several times if I was hungry. I wasn't. I threw my medal into my drawer and laid on my bed for the rest of the evening. The ants that had crawled within my skin the entire day continued to march up and down my insides. This time it wasn't a nervous jumble of marching, but an organized troop pulsating. The consistency made me even more anxious. They never explained to me how she did it, and I was scared to see what she would look like. Tears welled in my eyes, and I begged my mind for sleep, but received nothing. I awoke to the noise of movement outside the door. Sunlight filled the small window in the room I shared with my mother. I realized this was one of the only nights that I had slept without her. I always dreamed of the day when we would move into our own house and I would be able to sleep in my own room, but the thought of now seemed weird. I could hear the thumps of my grandma's rolling pin bang against her cutting board. As I reached the entrance to the kitchen, I smelled a strong woodsy odor. I met my Uncle Freddie's gaze. His perfect haircut trimmed just above his ears, the way his outfit was perfectly creased in all the right places, and his huge watch shimmered under the light of the cheap light bulbs. "What's up, girl?" I smiled a short smile and proceeded to fill my plate with beans and bacon. I sat down and without uttering a word began stuffing my face as if I hadn't eaten in days. Shortly after, we piled into my uncle's huge truck. I knew where we were going, but I wanted desperately to be anywhere but here. The aroma of my uncle's cologne was making me motion sick. I stared out of the window, praying desperately for something to keep my focus off puking. The highways of Houston were foreign to me, endless loops of road intersecting like a spider's web. At my seat in the back, all I could do was wonder, what would the hospital be like? Would it be like movies? The thought made a shiver crawl up my spine. Just as my thoughts were getting the best of me, there it was in all its glory, Astroworld. The looping roller coasters, just as they appeared in the commercial. My eyes widened and I longed to be able to get off the truck and enter the place where happiness blossomed. The flags flapped lazily over the theme park. People entered joyously. My heart dropped into my stomach and tears welled in my eyes. Why couldn't I be there instead? I wanted to have fun. I forced the tears back and coughed to choke back the emotions, sorry, that selfishly entered my mind. The outside of the hospital seemed like any other. The parking garage attached held an eerie feeling. The sensation of nausea overcame me once more. My uncle parked his truck nearest the entrance to the elevators. We all exited the truck and looked at each other in bewilderment. I felt so bad for my grandparents. They stared uncomfortably at each other. I don't believe that they ever thought they would be visiting any of their children in a mental hospital. My grandma held onto her shawl that draped around her small shoulders. The red color reminded me of blood. Another chill crawled up my spine. We entered the elevator, my grandma, my grandpa, my uncle, my aunt, and me. The elevator dinged once, twice, a final time to signal we were on the third floor. We filed out of the elevator and came upon the welcome desk. Only this welcome desk was not so welcoming. The two secretaries that took their place at this desk were not inviting. Both of their faces mixed boredom with disgust. The time had come. I would come face to face with my mother. We were ushered into a room. The walls, the ceiling, and the floor were white. Not just any white, a shockingly translucent white. The walls were able to mirror back a reflection. I sat in the chair provided for me and stared at the tile. Not a speck of dirt or dust covered the floor. The grout of the tile was the cleanest I had ever seen. I smudged my Converse against the tile, wanting to make it dirty, wanting to create a skid mark and destroy the perfection. Just then, the door creaked open. My mother entered the room, followed by a burly man in white scrubs. Her face seemed aged, sunken, yet she wore a smile on her face. She sat in the chair across from me, and that is when I saw them. Taped up both of her forearms was gauze. Not white like the floor, the walls, or the nurse's scrub. Red, stained. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you all once again. I'm going to be reading The Cursed Wings of Icarus that I wrote for the Bayou Review. All right. I looked out of the window of my room to gaze at the only view I've known for the last 3 years. I knew the churning greenish brown bayou so well I could have recited its trees, rocks, and dead yellow grass from memory. Two thick brushes of trees lined either sides of the bayou, a home for all sorts of wetland creatures. Luckily, my 17th floor apartment window allowed an unobstructed view of the water and only a fraction of the humid air that all native Southerners have grown to despise. I looked down at a turtle slowly crawling back home, the outline of its shell bobbing under the surface before shooting off like an arrow underwater. I wondered if the turtles and fish had ever looked back up at me too. My daydreaming was interrupted by the rattle of the dog's collar from across the apartment. I felt the blood in my veins turn icy. Somehow, despite my dad's debilitating agoraphobia, the same sickness that compelled him to confine both himself and me into this shabby apartment, he had gotten the unbelievably stupid idea to adopt a stray dog he had seen wandering around outside. He had made some claim about the thing's blue-black fur being an omen, like he had ever been a spiritual man. We had to take it in and care for it. It was a black Labrador mix with a spotch of white across its chest. Despite all his love for the thing, Dad had neglected to give it a proper name. We had simply referred to it as the dog. I was fine with that because a creature without a name is unloved, and that's exactly what the dog was. Not on my dad's behalf, of course. I was even beginning to think he loved the dog more than me. Naturally, the day that he chose to buy a 40-pound bag of dog food over a birthday present for me was when that suspicion was confirmed. I looked away from the window, every muscle in my body still, trying to hear where the thing had gone. I heard claws against the old hardwood grow closer, then further away as the dog passed by my room. My muscles relaxed. This past week has been some of the hardest of my life. Adopting the dog had made my dad's life exponentially better, yet it had made mine twice as hard. It growled and snapped at me when I tried to go near it or anything it deemed its territory, which included all areas of the apartment besides my room. Its teeth had grazed me a few times, never drawing blood, but hurting just enough to swell my resentment. Luckily, due to my dad's VA checks, he was home most days to feed and walk the thing so I didn't have to. I doubt either of them would let me if I even tried. I didn't know how much longer I could live like this. I was being made an unwilling prisoner in the already living nightmare. Sure, I could have left whenever I wanted to, but where would I go? My dad was all I had, and vice versa. I couldn't do that to him. Besides, I'd never seen Dad so happy. Just the other day, he went and checked the mail with the dog. Usually, the mail was a weekly affair that required a day of mental preparation and a personal escort to the mailbox. Yet he had gone up and went like it was nothing, leash in hand. He had even started taking the thing for walks along the back of the building near the bayou. I had been resolute in getting rid of the dog after the first few days, but I couldn't ruin this for Dad. There had to be another way to make this bearable, just until he was well enough for me to leave. Once I was absolutely certain the thing had returned to my dad's room, I got up from the window. My limbs were stiff with non-use. I knelt and threw aside the covers that obscured the view of the food stores under my bed. Empty. I had expected them to last me at least until tomorrow morning, when Dad would be taking the dog for its daytime walk, and I would be left to restock without fear. I miscalculated. I wouldn't even have anything to eat for dinner tonight unless I bit the bullet and made the trip to the kitchen. I waited until I could hear my dad snoring from the other room before I started to prepare. I made sure the parachute I fashioned from old bed sheets was still under my pillow. Easy access should this mission go sideways. I had it thrown together while Dad was away, utilizing the novice sewing abilities I learned from a few of his books and my mom's old sewing kit. I thought of her sometimes. What would she think of all this? I grabbed the old wicker basket that used to be hers. My memories were scarce. She passed away when I was too young to remember whether her death had been self-inflicted. She was sick, Icarus. She's in a better place now, and she misses you very much. I remember Dad telling me, crouched down to meet my eyes, his face the portrait of feigned strength. This mission would prove to be a test of patience and will. I pushed aside the memories of Mom and opened the window, just in case I had to grab that parachute and make a run for it. The ridiculousness of this situation was not lost on me. How was I taking so many precautions just so I could avoid a stupid dog? What had my life come to? I then made my way back to the door and opened it just a sliver, making sure the coast was clear before I opened it completely. I was just about done filling the basket when I heard the dreaded jingle of the thing's collar. Fuck. My body stiffened. I tried to listen where it had gone. but I didn't hear a single sound after that, neither claws on the hardwood nor the dreaded chime. I turned around slowly. To my utter horror, I was greeted by the silhouette of the dog, its throat rumbling with a growl. The rays from the streetlight outside had caught in its eyes, making them glow a sickly kind of yellowish green. I tried to slowly back away to my room, but it was too late. I got as far as my bed, setting the basket down gently as it watched me from the doorway. I only had enough time to grab my parachute and run when it started barking. I made a sprint for the window, not knowing if the thing was advancing on me. I scrambled to secure the parachute over both my shoulders. In that moment, it dawned upon me that I had never tested this out beforehand. My heart hammered in my chest. I knew now wasn't the time for second guessing. I had to act, or else I would die in this crappy apartment, my feeble memory from 3 years ago, the only remnant of the outside world. The windowsill ejected from under my feet as I flew up from the window. As I flew from the window, the thing was still going crazy, paws up against where I had just been standing. I felt the linens balloon and catch the wind. Relief washed over me. I was finally free. I rejoiced in my newfound freedom until I felt the dog lurch forward and tear holes into my parachute, my beautifully made wings. The book I read on aerodynamics and gravity would soon betray me. I plummeted downward into the trees, snagging and snapping a few branches and bones. The force had shaken me free from the homemade parachute wings and sent me diving into the muddiness of the bayou. Oh, sorry, I lost my place. Hold on. Okay. I broke the surface and cracked my skull against the hardened clay at the water's floor. I felt the current pull me away, the motion of the fishtails tickle me as they swam along. I heard the plunge of the turtles as they dove back into the water. My body wasn't my body anymore, but just another part of the bayou. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have our next contributor, Abigail Marin, please?
Good afternoon. So I created a acrylic painting. So this painting is called Childhood Dream Home. I made this painting in the spring of 2024 for my class painting one because we had to do a landscape painting. And so my inspiration behind this painting and for this assignment was my home in Mexico. I went back to visit Mexico, Monterrey, in the summer of 2023. And Monterrey is famously known for its mountain, which is called Cerro de la Silla. And it basically means a horse saddle in English. And because the two peaks of the mountain kind of make the shape of a horse saddle, that's why it was named that. My mom and grandma were also born in Monterrey, and even I lived there for a few years when I was young. So when we went back to visit, I wanted to bring a piece of Mexico back home with us, especially since I haven't been there in like a really long time. And then, as you can see in the bottom, I also created small little colorful squares with my palette knife to kind of represent the houses in the mountain and around it. And I didn't want to make it all like realistic. Kind of wanted to highlight the beauty of Monterrey and its community. And this is also part of the reason why I named this art piece Childhood Dream Home, because this was my home as a child, and even today, it's still my second home. And Monterrey was always a beautiful place to me and a place I could call home. And since it had been a long time since I had visited Monterrey, when I would think back on my childhood memories, it always felt like a dream. So I wanted to kind of recreate that nostalgia and that feeling of home with this painting. Thank you.
Our next contributor is Lindsay H. Morales.
Hi guys, I hope everyone can hear me. This is a poem to and for my kids. It's called To My Chickadees. To my sweet chickadees, my busy bees, whose laughter and love fill our home. To funny faces and sticky fingers, chicken nuggets and softball dingers. To swings and playsets, playgrounds and sandpits, toothless smiles and gummy kisses. To curly cues and squeaky shoes, to trips and falls and soppy boo-hoos. To your ultimate ups and your disastrous downs, and oh my goodness, those baby sounds. To my harmonious highs and lackluster lows, to the endless collection of those tiny, or little ties and little bows. To all 3 chickadees, to you guys, my honeybees, next thing you know, you're off to go to unlock life's hidden keys. Thank you.
She's not here.
Then we can go into our next contributor, Gail Plunkett.
Hello, nice to see all of you. I'm going to read something I wrote about my experience of creating the art that was accepted by the Bayou Review. This one is not one of them. This one and this one are the two that I'm writing about. The first one, Awakening, well, let me get to the reading. Awakening and This is Freedom are the first and third images from a series called Chaos, consisting of 9 images and 9 poems. While making the series, I stumbled into yet another reason why art matters. Telling you about what I experienced turned out to be easier said than done. After 6 failed tryouts on paper, I almost decided I couldn't, that I didn't really know what had happened, or worse, that nothing at all had happened, that I had just imagined that the act of making art had transcended itself and taken me to someplace new, someplace better. But I decided to give it one last try, because the chance to transcend the already far from ordinary act of making art doesn't come along very often, and I wasn't ready to give up on the possibility that I had experienced just that. Mind you, I'm not saying that I made transcendent art. I'm saying that I was transported in a magical way by the act of making it. Just a few sentences into my last-ditch effort to tell about it, I realized what the problem had been as I tried to verbalize the inexplicable. I had mistaken revelation for transformation. It's true that transformation sometimes follows revelation. Maybe that's where my confusion came from. Also, both words invoke major drama. Revelation, transformation. Even though, more often than not, both of them are quiet, fleeting moments, sometimes so quiet and fleeting that it is easy to shrug them off and quickly forget them, like a sprinkle of fairy dust floating past you on a soft breeze. Anyway, here is what really happened, as opposed to what my melodramatic, not to mention mistaken self kept trying to write about, instead of the tender, glorious truth. As I worked on the project, Chaos, I was enthralled, excited in a way that I wasn't used to while making art. I didn't realize that until after it was finished, that I had put down marks on paper that told the essence of how I had lived my life so far, all 60-something years of it. It is wrong to say that the reality of it hit me after a few days. Instead, I sensed a barely perceptible click as all the pieces fell into place, followed by the barely perceptible sound of many tiny footsteps made by the tiny bits of anxiety, fear, doubt, shame, despair, and confusion as they skulked off the stage to the left, just as tiny bits of hope, tranquility, courage, clarity, faith, and self-respect wandered on stage from the right. My very own revelation, spoken by myself to myself alone, came in the form of my life passing before my eyes, but not in a brilliant flash, more like a humble cartoon strip. My higher self has spoken, and the multitudes of all my lesser selves have heard and finally understood that yes, the chaos of living is here to stay, but that somewhere along the way, I have come to terms with chaos, have learned how I can move through it safely and use it to thrive instead of being used by it. So I can stop now, stop waiting for the axe to fall. Thank you.
And for our next contributor, we have Cheyenne Ralph.
Hi, I'm going to be presenting my piece, Pomegranates. I remember watching my mother crack open pomegranates, her hands working with precision. The knife would slice through the skin, a faint cracking sound would be heard from within the fruit, and the deep blood-like juice would run down the sides of her hands, tracing the lines of her fingers, dripping onto her wrist, and often staining the fabric of her clothes. She always complains about the mess they make. She'd toss the precious seeds into a bowl and then sprinkle a pinch of salt over them. She'd watch as my father shoveled bite after bite while she began to slice into another one for herself. There was never any acknowledgment of the labor of love that had just taken place. The act of opening a pomegranate seemed violent in its intimacy. There was something almost primal about it. The way the skin resisted, the way the fruit fought back as I pried it open, the fear of being exposed to the pomegranate's pulse, the seeds clinging to their home with an almost desperate grip. I would dig my fingers into the tough rind, feeling the membranes, the pulp, and the stubborn seeds. It was as if I was pulling them from their safe space, tearing them away from the one and only place they had ever known. The crimson stains on my fingers seemed to mark me as guilty. Of what? I don't know. The mess that followed, the relentless streaks of red across my skin, was impossible to wash away. It clung to me, as though I had given a part of myself over in the process. A pomegranate is like love in so many ways. It holds within it all the complexities of the heart, the sweetness that leaves you dumbstruck, the bitterness that coats your tongue, and the spaces in between that are neither joy nor sorrow, but something that consists of both. The seeds do not follow a single code. Some are soft and sweet, while others are sharp and tangy. You can't really understand it until you taste it, until you are stained by it. It requires you to be vulnerable, to peel back layers, to get your hands dirty. In the end, you discover that love, like a pomegranate, is something that can never truly be tamed, never fully contained. It is both fragile and defiant, worthy and feral. It is worth the mess. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next contributor is Anne Ridley.
I saw her earlier, but I can't see her now. Anne Ridley, are you there? No, so let's go on.
Our next contributor is Stephen Shui.
Yes, Stephen Schwei, thank you for including me in this issue. I have two poems that were included. This one might seem like it was prompted by the pandemic, but it was actually written quite a bit before that. This hard body. What is it about the human body that makes it so difficult to live with? It's nearly impossible to keep in balance with so many chemical reactions and emotional turmoil. You can work on the external features and add fuel regularly, but eventually the parts start to fail. The heart, liver, kidney, or even the brain. Cancerous rust can eat from the inside. Others witness the wear and tear. There are so many possible points of failure. And yet the species is resilient, adaptable, and fine-tuned. We've survived the onslaught of endless microbes, withering catastrophes, and our own senseless follies. We design workarounds, patches, and replacement parts. We create more human bodies to give it a try and prolong our existence as a species. We hope to be one animal that never becomes extinct, propagating and adapting, flourishing and surviving, even as so many members continue to succumb to our frailties. Thank you very much.
And for our next contributor, we have Donya Marie Serrano.
Hi, thank you to the Bayou Review and Lau for inviting me to this event. I appreciate it. I'm going to read one of my creative nonfiction works. It's entitled Fleeing. My abuelo put a bullet in his head the day before I started third grade. I was back to school shopping with my parents at Almeida Mall when it happened. Miguel, a family friend, came to tell us the news. We were sitting in front of a fountain under a glass skylight at the center of the mall when he found us. I was eating around my Baskin-Robbins pistachio ice cream, focused on reaching the cone, when Miguel whispered something in my father's ear as he simultaneously pointed his finger towards his temple. I remember seeing my mother collapse against my father as her body went limp from the blow. I remember her wails coming deep from within a place she has kept locked away since. She grabs one of my sticky hands as we all stumble out of the mall and into the light of day. Drops of green goo fall rhythmically on the pavement. I do not cry. I keep walking. I want to run. My abuelo fled from Cuba in 1961 after having all of his material possessions taken away from him. Departing on a small plane as an exile, he headed towards Jamaica with his wife at his side, and my mother scrunched up on the armrest between them. He had worked as an electrician in Santa Clara, Cuba, a place known for its tamarind trees, and now Che Guevara's mausoleum. He was quite the handyman, repairing televisions and other electronics for people all over the island. He was also an anti-Castro political activist at a time when speaking out against the Cuban government meant risking arrest, torture, and execution. My abuelo told me that shortly before leaving Cuba, my grandfather was contacted by some of the more prominent townspeople to repair a water line at one of Castro's speaking events. Instead of fixing it, he busted the water line and fled. He and his family were gone by the time shots were fired behind their house days after the event. My mother recalls the prickles of the horsehair mattress and the humid air in the room where they slept when arriving in Jamaica. She remembers the government food handouts consisting of peanut butter, Spam ham, and milk powder when they arrived in Miami. She remembers learning English by watching television in a single-room apartment she shared with her parents and her two sisters. She remembers sitting outside for lunch at school because she was not allowed to sit in the cafeteria with her English-speaking classmates, enjoying their hot lunches. She remembers all of this, but hid it from me until I turned 30. My mother majored in English at the University of Puerto Rico. She became a teacher and went on to obtain a master's degree at the University of Houston. When I was 6 years old, I would sit with her in a large auditorium in Farish Hall as she would take notes, and I would color and pretend to listen to the professor. In those days, she regularly read to me before bed and told me stories about how she spent entire summers in Puerto Rico, playing at the beach, running on the sand with her father by her side. I have been running all my life. I think it started when I was 5 years old and my abuelo taught me how to hit a baseball and run around the bases. I spent my childhood and adolescence running on a softball field. At 19, running became a ritual. At 35, I ran my first half marathon, and at mile 11, sweating and exhausted, I saw an image of my abuelo pushing me forward. In that moment, I think about the frozen lime slushies he'd buy me at Astros games. I think about his libraries consisting of books of all genres, pieces of a puzzle of the man he was, a man I never really knew, a man I could never solve. Nearing the finish line, I continued to run until I could hear his laughter, as I recall the last full day of his life when I saw him release all of his multicolored pet parakeets from their cages as they flew toward freedom. I fly across the finish line, begin to walk, finally slowing down long enough to cry. Thank you.
Thank you. And next contributor is Ramon Zavarone.
Hello, folks. Forgive me, I've got a bit of a cough, so I may just cough during this performance. I'm reading the poem Model Immigrants. Model immigrants. That's what they called us. We were better than the others, better educated, better employed, better moneyed, better behaved. There was never any trouble. Our skin color was always a problem, but all those better qualities compensated until they weren't. They used the word Pajit. It was a slur. It was meant to offend. It was designed to show us our place. That no matter what we did, how well we fitted in, how much we contributed, we were never welcome. I recall Jewish friends telling of their experience, how it was never enough. the danger of being too assimilated. When you take the jobs they want, the incomes they covet, when you live the lives they see as their birthright, when they see you where they once were and where they want to be again, you become foreign again. Thank you.
Say it again, sorry.
Oh, can we have our next contributor, Thomas Tice?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm going to be reading a haiku I wrote. It was inspired by the story of my great-great-grandfather who was a moonshiner and killed a police officer in self-defense and was branded a maniac in the local papers. The poem is called Hazy Highlands. The clear moon shines bright in the mountains, transforming man into maniac. Thank you.
Yeah, for our next contributor, we have Christopher Woods.
I think Christopher's not here. So as our last reader, we'll have Tahni Farfan.
Hi. So thank you so much for letting me share this. I'm going to share one of my poems. Very so. What it stays behind. Your love isn't love anymore. It's residue. I feel it is stuck in me, beneath my skin, between the folds of my being. Every nerve hums your name. Static ache I never asked for. I want to tear out every piece of myself that remembers you. Every kiss map across my thighs, every bite blooming on my neck, every whisper word lodged in my ears. I want to scrub my skin raw, rip out the molecules you touch, burn the parts of me that still mourn your name. Your love was a colonization, an invasion I welcomed, only to realize too late you never meant to stay. Thank you.
So thank you to our contributors for reading their work or discussing their work. And going into our experience of being an editor for the Bayou Review, being an editor for the Bayou Review was such a uniquely challenging experience. Not only did we get to contribute to our own specialties, but we also branched out into other skill sets. For example, we managed the Bayou Review social media. Some of us got into graphic design, editing, communication, and promoting the magazine. And being tasked with such responsibilities under the guide of a faculty advisor allows for invaluable professional and real-world experience that is typically missing in traditional coursework. And I think I speak for all my fellow interns in saying that the work we put in as editors for the Bayou Review was a tough but fruitful experience that developed our personal and collaborative capabilities.
Thank you for joining the Bayou Review for the spring 2025 launch. We will begin distributions for the magazines this Thursday, April 24th. Please join us at the Bayou Review office at 2:30 to pick up a free copy and enjoy some pizza. One main building as 250.
So thank you all for coming. We hope you join us this Thursday and get to meet the editors, pick up a copy of the magazine and enjoy the pizza. And it was a pleasure to have all of you reading and talking about your work. Thank you.